Okay, let me take you back. It was Christmas Eve, 2019, in Portland, Oregon. My neighborhood, Balsam Street, was one of those picture-perfect postcard places. Every house was drowning in lights, inflatable Santas, the whole deal. It was the kind of street where people left their doors unlocked to run cookies to a neighbor. Naive, right? My name's Martin. I was 26, living with my fiancée, Sarah, in a little craftsman bungalow. We'd just put up our first tree together. It was a big deal for us. That night, we were cozied up on the couch, watching some terrible holiday movie, the fire crackling. It was perfect. Then, at exactly 10:17 p.m., the power went out. Not just our house, the entire street. Everything plunged into this thick, silent darkness. The cheerful blinking lights from the house across the street vanished. Our TV died mid-laugh track. All we could hear was the wind howling outside. "Great," Sarah muttered, pulling a blanket tighter. "Transformer probably blew." I fumbled for my phone to use the flashlight. "I'll go check the breaker box. It's in the garage." Now, our garage was detached. A little old building at the back of our long, narrow yard. To get to it, I had to walk out the back door, across a stone path, through about 50 feet of pure darkness. The yard was fenced, but it always felt exposed. I grabbed a heavy mag light from the kitchen drawer. The beam cut through the black as I stepped outside. The cold hit me like a slap. My breath fogged in the beam. The stones were slick with a thin layer of ice. I remember the sound my boots made. A slow crunch, crunch, crunch on the frozen gravel path. I swung the light left and right, the beam catching the skeletal branches of our apple tree. Nothing, just my own shadow, huge and wavering on the garage door. I reached for the handle. That's when I heard it, from inside the garage. A soft, wet, clicking sound, like someone slowly, patiently, popping their knuckles, one after the other. I froze. My hand hovered an inch from the cold metal handle. My heart did this weird stutter step in my chest. The garage was supposed to be empty. I'd been in there that afternoon getting decorations. The sound stopped. Maybe it was the old fridge we kept out there, but it was unplugged. Maybe pipes in a detached garage? No way. I took a deep breath, my nerves feeling silly. "It's just the dark, Martin. Get it together." I turned the handle and pushed the door open. The beam of my flashlight swept across the familiar clutter. The lawnmower, bikes hanging on the wall, shelves of paint cans. Everything was still, quiet. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding, and walked toward the breaker box on the far wall. I had to pass my old workbench. That's when I saw it. My flashlight beam landed on the surface of the bench, and my blood just stopped. Sitting right in the middle of the clean, dusty wood was a single, pristine, red and white striped candy cane. It wasn't there this afternoon. I know it wasn't. It was laid out perfectly, like an offering. The plastic wrapper glittered in my light. A cold dread sharper than the winter air seeped into my bones. Someone had been in here, recently, while we were in the house. I spun around, the flashlight beam jerking wildly across the shadows in the corners. "Hello?" My voice came out a dry croak. Nothing. Then my light caught something else. On the concrete floor, leading from the side door of the garage, the door that opened to the alley, toward the workbench were wet footprints. They were small, bare feet, and they were melting into the cold concrete. They were fresh. Who walks barefoot in the snow? In December? My brain short-circuited. All I could think was Sarah. I bolted. I didn't go to the breaker box. I ran out of the garage, leaving the door wide open, and sprinted back across the yard toward the warm, dark square of our back door. I nearly slipped on the ice. I burst inside, slamming the door and locking it, my back against the wood, gasping for air. "Martin, what's wrong? You're white as a sheet." Sarah was standing in the doorway to the living room, her face pale in the glow of her phone. "Someone's in the garage," I panted. "There's a candy cane, and footprints, bare feet." Her eyes went wide with fear, but then she shook her head. Maybe it was one of the neighborhood kids playing a prank? The Miller boys are little terrors. It made a sliver of sense. A stupid holiday prank. My racing heart began to slow. Yeah, a prank. Had to be. We decided to just go to bed. Power or no power. We locked every door and window. Checked the closets, the whole paranoid routine. We crawled into bed, clinging to each other in the dark, listening to the wind. I finally drifted into a fitful sleep. I woke up a few hours later, needing water. The power was still out. The house was a tomb. I shuffled to the kitchen in the dark. Not wanting to wake Sarah with a light, I filled a glass from the tap and turned to go back. My eyes had adjusted to the gloom. I could make out the shape of our Christmas tree in the living room, a dark silhouette against the slightly lighter window, and that's when I saw it. Hanging on the tree, right at eye level, was another candy cane. But this one was different. The plastic was torn open at the top, and it was half-eaten. The white part was gone, bitten off. The red hook part remained, dangling from a branch by its twisty. My breath caught in my throat. That wasn't there when we went to bed. I would have seen it. Sarah would have said something. I stood there, frozen, the glass of water trembling in my hand. Creak. The sound was unmistakable. It came from directly above me, from the attic. A slow, weight-bearing pressure on an old floorboard. We never used the attic. The access panel was in the hallway ceiling, and the pull-down ladder was so stiff we joked about it being sealed shut. Creak. Crack. Another step. Then silence. Then I heard it. The sound. The same wet, slow, clicking noise from the garage. It was coming from right above my head. It was in the house. It had followed me inside. And it wasn't a kid. I didn't scream. I didn't move. Pure, primal terror locked my joints. I just stared up at the ceiling, listening to that awful clicking move slowly, deliberately, across the attic floor above our bedroom, where Sarah was sleeping. My mind finally broke free. I ran. I crashed into the bedroom, fumbling for my mag light on the nightstand. "Sarah, get up, now!" I yelled, shaking her. She woke, disoriented and scared. "What, Martin? What?" Thump. A heavy, solid weight landed on the attic access panel in the hallway right outside our door. The thin wood of the panel bowed slightly under the pressure. We both saw it. Sarah screamed. The clicking was louder now, frantic, right on the other side of our bedroom door. Then it stopped. We heard a new sound, a low, rhythmic scritch, scratch, scritch, like long, ragged fingernails slowly dragging down the other side of the wooden door. "He's here," Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. I did the only thing I could think of. I threw open our bedroom window, the one that led onto the roof of the front porch. "Out! Go!" I pushed Sarah through, then climbed out after her onto the freezing, snowy shingles. We half slid, half fell into the front yard, landing in a snowbank. We ran, barefoot and in our pajamas, to the neighbor's house, pounding on their door until lights came on. The police came. They searched the house, top to bottom. They found nothing in the attic but dust and insulation. No footprints, no candy cane wrappers, nothing. The lead officer, a tired-looking guy named Ramos, said it was probably a raccoon in the walls, and the stress of the blackout made us imagine the rest. The candy canes? Probably ours. We just forgot. Case closed. We stayed at a hotel for a week. We were so ready to believe Officer Ramos. We wanted to believe him. We moved back in, trying to laugh it off. A few days later, I was finally brave enough to clean up the Christmas decorations. I took down the tree, stripping it of ornaments. When I lifted the star off the very top, something was tucked into the metal spokes, holding it in place. I pulled it out. It was the other half of the candy cane. The white, uneaten part. The end was sharp, broken off in a jagged bite mark, and wrapped tightly around it was a single, long strand of dark, greasy hair. It wasn't mine. It wasn't Sarah. I never told her what I found. We sold the house 6 months later and moved to an apartment with no attic. But every Christmas, when I see a candy cane, I get this icy feeling in my gut. I don't hear reindeer on the roof anymore. I listen for the clicking, and I know, somewhere, on a quiet street just like Balsam, someone else is hanging a candy cane on their tree, and something is in their attic, waiting for the lights to go out. This ain't a ghost story. It's worse. It's a people story. And it happened to me and my little brother, Danny, on Christmas Eve, 2021, on a stretch of highway outside of Flagstaff, Arizona. We were driving back from visiting our mom in Phoenix. Danny was 15, riding shotgun, glued to his phone. I was behind the wheel of my old Jeep, pushing through a mean desert rainstorm. It was one of those cold, biting rains that turns the blacktop into a mirror. We were on Route 9, a 12-lane highway that cuts through empty scrubland. No streetlights, no houses, just darkness, rain, and the yellow dashes flying under our headlights. The Jeep sputtered, My heart dropped into my gut. The gas gauge, which had been hovering just above empty, was now pinned on E. The engine coughed once, a deep, sick sound, and died. The power steering went stiff. I wrestled the Jeep onto the narrow gravel shoulder as we coasted to a dead stop. The sudden silence was deafening, filled only by the drumming of rain on the roof. "Are you kidding me, Mike?" Danny said, looking up from his phone. "No service. I've got no bars." I didn't have any either. We were in a dead zone, in the middle of nowhere, on Christmas Eve. "Perfect." "Pop the hood," I said, trying to sound like I knew what I was doing. "Maybe it's just a wet connection." We got out into the freezing rain. The hood hissed when I opened it. I stared at the engine, a mess of metal I didn't understand. Useless. Danny shined his phone's flashlight around, the beam cutting through the downpour. Nothing but darkness and rain in every direction. That's when we saw the other light. A single, warm, yellow glow. Maybe a quarter-mile down the road, off to the right. It looked like a porch light. "Someone lives out here?" Danny said, a spark of hope in his voice. "Must be a ranch house or something." I said, "Come on. We can ask to use a phone." We started walking, the gravel crunching under our shoes, shoulders hunched against the cold rain. The light got closer. It wasn't a ranch. It was a small, run-down roadside attraction, the kind that's been closed for decades. A faded sign, barely visible, read the North Pole Trading Post. The building was a shack shaped like a giant log cabin, with one pathetic string of multicolored Christmas lights blinking erratically under the eaves. The porch light was on, and on the porch, in a rocking chair, sat Santa Claus. I kid you not. Full suit, fake white beard, big black boots. He was just sitting there, rocking slowly, staring out into the rain. A red pickup truck, old and rusted, was parked off to the side. Danny grabbed my arm. "Dude, this is weird. Let's just go back to the car." "And do what?" I said, my teeth chattering. "Freeze? He's just some old guy who runs this place. Probably lonely. He'll have a phone." We approached the porch. Up close, the Santa suit was cheap and filthy. The white fur trim was gray with grime. The man inside it was maybe in his 60s, with watery blue eyes that fixed on us as we stepped into the circle of light. He stopped rocking. "Merry Christmas," he said. His voice was a dry rasp, like sandpaper on wood. It didn't sound merry. "Hi, sir," I said, forcing politeness. "Our car broke down back on the highway. We're stranded. Can we please use your phone to call a tow truck?" He stared at us for a long time. The rain pattered on the roof. The blinking Christmas lights reflected in his eyes. "Phone's inside," he finally said, not moving. "Doors open." Something in my brain screamed no. This was all wrong. The deserted shack, the creepy Santa. But the cold was bone deep, and the alternative was a long, wet, hopeless walk. I nodded to Danny. "Stay close." The inside of the trading post was a tomb of forgotten junk. Dusty shelves held broken toys, cracked snow globes, and jars of stale candy. The air smelled of mildew and mothballs. A single bare bulb hung from the ceiling, and in the corner, on a small wooden desk, sat an old rotary phone, the kind with a cord. "Thank you," I said, heading straight for it. I picked up the heavy receiver. Dead silence. No dial tone. I clicked the cradle a few times. Nothing. "The line's dead," the Santa said from the doorway. He was blocking it. He'd come inside without a sound. Storm must have knocked it out. My skin crawled. Danny moved closer to me. "Okay," I said, putting the receiver down carefully. "Well, we'll just wait out the rain in our car then. Thanks anyway." "Can't let you do that," the man said, his raspy voice flat. "Not safe out there. You'll catch your death." He took a step further into the room. "I got a cot in the back. You boys can sleep there. It's Christmas. I got presents." That word "presents" hung in the damp air. It didn't sound generous. It sounded like a threat. "No, really. We're fine," I said, my voice tightening. I started edging toward the door, pulling Danny with me. "We'll just walk back." He moved then, quicker than I expected for an old man. He didn't come at us. He just sidestepped to a shelf and picked up one of the snow globes. It had a tiny, smiling Santa inside. He shook it gently, watching the plastic flakes swirl. "You know," he said, not looking at us. "People forget about places like this. They drive right on by. They don't stop. They don't visit Santa." He looked up, and his eyes were empty. "But sometimes, Santa gets visitors anyway. Lost ones. Like you." That was it. The pretense was gone. This wasn't a kindly old man. This was a predator in a cheap costume, and his hunting ground was a deserted highway. "Run," I whispered to Danny. We bolted for the door. The man didn't chase us. He just laughed, a low, wet chuckle that chased us out into the rain. We sprinted back toward the highway, our feet slipping in the mud. The Jeep was still there, a dark hulk on the shoulder. We dove inside, locking the doors, breathing in ragged, panicked gasps. What do we do? What do we do? Danny was hyperventilating. Just wait. Months. Maybe a car will come. Just stay down. We sat in the dark, watching the single yellow porch light in the distance. 5 minutes passed. 10. More. No cars. Then, the porch light went out. A moment later, we saw headlights. Not from the highway, from the dirt track leading from the trading post to the road. The red pickup truck. It pulled onto the blacktop and just sat there, engine idling, facing our direction. Its high beams were on, blinding us through the rain-streaked windshield. He's coming, Danny whimpered. The truck didn't move. It just sat there, watching. A predator sizing up trapped prey. My mind raced. The Jeep was dead. We couldn't outrun him on foot. We were sitting ducks. Then, I remembered. The glove box. My dad's old roadside emergency kit. I fumbled it open. My fingers numb. There were flares. 2 red highway flares. Get in the back seat and get down, I hissed at Danny. I grabbed a flare, cracked the driver's side window just an inch, and lit it. The flare erupted with a sharp hiss and a blinding, sputtering red flame. I shoved it out the window, holding it high. The intense crimson light lit up the whole scene. The Jeep, the rain, the empty road, and it illuminated the cab of the red pickup. The Santa was inside, his fake beard off now, revealing a thin, cruel mouth. He wasn't smiling anymore. He looked annoyed, like we'd ruined his game. He stared at the flare for a long moment. Then, slowly, he put the truck in reverse. He backed up, turned around, and drove slowly back down the dirt road toward the dark shack. The headlights vanished. We stayed there all night, taking turns holding the second flare lit, too terrified to sleep. At first light, as the rain stopped, an old rancher in a truck finally came by and gave us a lift to the next town. We told a sheriff about the Santa at the North Pole trading post. He just nodded, like he'd heard it before. Old man Fisher, he said wearily. Lives out there. Harmless weirdo. Been arrested for trespassing, petty theft. Never could prove anything worse. That place is condemned. They never found our Jeep. When the tow truck went back, it was gone. Stolen, they said. Probably stripped for parts. I think about it every Christmas. Not about the presents or the music. I think about a single porch light in the desert rain. I think about how easy it is to become a lost visitor. And I remember the look in that man's eyes when he saw the flare. It wasn't fear of the light. It was anger, because the light meant he couldn't hide in the dark anymore. And I wonder how many lost visitors he found before us, who didn't have a flare. This story isn't mine. It was told to me by my cousin, Sarah, and I'm only telling it now because she moved across the country and changed her last name. She says she can finally breathe. This happened to her in a suburb of Portland, Oregon, 2 years ago. Her son, Leo, was just 8 months old. It was December 27th. You know that weird, quiet week between Christmas and New Year's, where the excitement's over and you're just tired, surrounded by wrapping paper and leftovers. That was them. Her husband, Mark, had gone back to work that day. It was just Sarah and Leo in their 2-story house on a cul-de-sac that was way too quiet. The first thing happened around noon. Sarah was in the kitchen, making a bottle. Leo was in his high chair, banging a spoon. The doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone. She went to the front door and looked through the peephole. No one. She figured it was kids messing around. But when she opened the door to check, there was a small, gift-wrapped box on the welcome mat. It was shiny silver paper, with a big, lopsided red bow. No tag. Her first thought was a late Christmas gift from a neighbor. Maybe it got delivered to the wrong house. She brought it inside, set it on the entryway table. Leo started fussing, so she tended to him, fed him, put him down for his nap. She forgot about the box, until a few hours later. She was folding laundry in the living room, monitor on the coffee table, when she heard a soft thump from the front of the house. Not the door. It sounded like it came from the wall. She walked over to the entryway. The silver box was on the floor. It must have fallen off the table. But here's the thing. The table is wide. The box was in the middle of it. There was no draft, no vibration. It didn't roll. It was like it was pushed. A little chill went up her spine. She picked it up. It was light. Too light. She shook it gently. Nothing. No sound at all. That's when her phone, sitting on the laundry pile, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. All it said, "Open it." Her blood went cold. This wasn't a neighbor. This was wrong. She threw the box back on the table, like it was on fire, and ran to check the locks on every door and window. Everything was secure. She called Mark, her voice shaking. He told her it was probably a wrong number combined with a weird coincidence. "Just throw the box out, babe. Don't open it." She wanted to believe him. She carried the monitor with her, listening to Leo's steady breathing, and took the box to the trash can outside. She dropped it in, slammed the lid, and came back inside, locking the deadbolt. She felt a little better. It was gone. Night fell early. Mark texted he'd be late, stuck at the office. The house felt huge and hollow. She put Leo to bed in his nursery upstairs at 7 p.m. She went to the bathroom to take a shower, leaving the monitor on the sink counter. The steam fogged up the mirror. She was rinsing her hair when she heard it, over the sound of the water, through the baby monitor speaker. A voice, a low, sing-song man's voice, whispering, "Rockabye baby." Sarah ripped the shower curtain back, slipping on the tile. She grabbed the monitor. The sound was gone, just the quiet, staticky hum of an empty room. The screen showed Leo's crib, dark and still. She told herself it was interference, a crossed signal from another monitor. It happens, but her heart was slamming against her ribs. She got out, wrapped in a towel, and crept down the hall to Leo's door. She peeked in. He was asleep, peaceful. She tiptoed in, checked the window. Locked. Done. She was being paranoid. She went back to her bedroom to get dressed. That's when she saw it. On her bed, centered on her pillow, was the silver gift box, with the lopsided red bow, the one she had thrown in the outside trash. It was back, and it was open. The lid was sitting neatly beside it. Inside the box wasn't a gift. It was a folded piece of white paper. She approached the bed like it was a live animal. She picked up the paper, her hands trembling, unfolded it. It was a photo, printed on plain copy paper. A picture of Leo's crib dodge, taken from inside his room. He was sleeping in it, wearing the same blue foodie pajamas he had on right now. The timestamp in the corner of the photo read, 7:14 p.m., 10 minutes ago. The monitor. The voice. He hadn't been on the monitor. He'd been in the room, with her baby. She didn't scream. A primal silent terror locked her throat. She dropped the photo and sprinted out of her room, down the hall to the nursery. She threw the door open. The room was ice cold. The window by the crib was wide open, the curtain fluttering in the winter wind. Snow was blowing onto the carpet, and Leah's crib was empty. The world dropped out from under her. A raw, guttural noise finally broke from her chest. She stumbled to the window, looking out into the dark backyard. Nothing. No one. She spun around, ready to run downstairs and call 911. And then she saw it. In the far corner of the dim room, the one shadowed by the closet, was Leah's big, plush rocking chair. It was rocking, slowly, back and forth, and in it, she saw the shape of a man, holding a bundle. The bundle moved. Leo let out a soft, sleepy whimper. The man in the chair stopped rocking. He spoke, his voice the same low whisper from the monitor. "You shouldn't have thrown away my present, Sarah." He stood up, holding her son. He was between her and the door. Sarah didn't think. She charged him, a mother bear with nothing to lose. She didn't go for him. She went for the bundle in his arms. She grabbed Leo, yanking him free with a strength she didn't know she had. The man grunted in surprise, stumbling back into the closet door. She didn't look back. She ran, clutching her screaming son, out of the room, down the stairs. She fumbled with the front door lock, got it open, and ran out into the freezing night in her pajamas, barefoot in the snow, screaming for help at the top of her lungs. Lights came on in neighbors' houses. A door opened. Someone called the police. They never found the man. He vanished out the nursery window and into the woods behind their property. The police found something that made Sarah and Mark sell the house within a month. In the nursery closet behind a stack of diaper boxes, they found a Santa suit, not a cheap costume, a high-quality wool suit. And on the floor next to it, neatly arranged, were several of Leo's pacifiers and a used bottle of milk. He hadn't just been in the house that night. The evidence suggested he'd been coming in for days, watching, waiting, playing Santa Ta. Sarah says she can't hear the song, Rockabye Baby, anymore. And Christmas, for her, it's not about lights or gifts. It's about checking the locks, over and over and over again, and never, ever answering the door.